Welcome back. In this section, we will be working on the hands-on for the workflow. In the previous section, we got a basic understanding about why workflow is utilized and what is the benefit. Instead of workflow, we don't create a separate application. And also, workflow is mostly related to your business process. So you can model the business process in software components, and it is very easy to do. So it's like the magic wand which you can basically use over your business process, and you can basically convert that business process into a system or a small application which can be then followed. So it reduces the workload from human or agent. What we call agent is typically a person who has been given some role. It can be a business manager, it can be a employee with certain activities, like the employee has to do reconciliation of tax or reconciliation of certain monitoring or status. So those type of activities can be done by your agent without much of remembering about how to perform those activity, reduce manual errors, and also in a lot of cases we can automate human workload and make it by machine. So that's the reason why we try to map the workflow into software component. Now this is the abbreviation. We have business process modeling notation. So that's what workflow is. Workflow is basically set of tools which you can utilize to model your business process. In short, it is also referred as BPMN. Now, in this section, our focus will be to go inside our SAP Cloud Platform, SCP, and try to see how can we create a simple workflow. And then we will be talking also about the API-based architecture, which we have to understand to create a complex scenario. Because in the architecture which we are now, when we go in SAP Cloud Platform, we might not get access to database what we used to get in the previous case. When we were writing programs in ABAP, you used to create reports, module pools, where if you want to update some data, you will directly update the database, or you call a BAPI to update the data. Now BAPI internally will be calling the database functions or SQL to update the records. So internally that was done in the BAPI. So in the modern era where we use API architecture, we basically have this layer of API which separates activities. So you basically are interfaced with this API, and this API will be doing your work. You have to just call the respective API to get data, to update the result, and you're basically calling this APIs, and API will get the job done. Now there will be a separate team who manages and develops on API. We will be covering that as well, but our objective is mostly to think about whatever functionality we want to create as an application or workflow that should be achievable with APIs. So that is the third part which we'll be expanding on and giving you a paradigm about how to think in API architecture perspective. In the coming courses of API management and Cloud Platform SDK, we will be again and again seeing those scenarios and architecture, but I want to give you a basic as we are already in SAP Cloud Platform and understanding the workflow and creating application which follows this architecture. So a basic would be provided, or a basic idea or notation to understand how this works will be provided. Then we will be creating some complex workflow like scanning the entire get entity set API and sending a mail giving you a report of how many are in error state or how many are in basically state which is not favorable or are in favorable. So those kind of operation of monitoring which you do in your SAP systems or in your ERP business process, there are certain kind of monitoring where a person has to monitor how things are and give a report. So those activity can be automated. So we will take a simple example of how can we automate by sending a mail if certain activity are wrong or certain status are not favorable, then how can it generate a report or email. And also at the end we will be seeing how we will be able to create a simple application. It can be a form or an app. How can we create app which can trigger a workflow? And this is going to be little advanced on workflow. So we will be going from a basic setup simple workflow to little matured or business centric workflow which can automate activities and take complex business process into account. More and more workflow and features related to workflow will be disclosed over time once we get comfortable with the basic. So let's start with the basic, creating our first workflow in our full stack web ID. So let's go ahead to our SAP Cloud Platform and we start the workflow creation.